started. Thank you all for coming this morning. My apologies. In all of my preparation, I managed to walk off and leave my microphone at home this morning, so I'm sure my sound's going to be different on this recording. We have all the next step stuff going on, so that's been a bunch of excitement. It's really good excitement, but it has me a little distracted. I want to thank you all for sticking with me here for the next month. I have a little bit of a detour that we're going to do that I think you'll find value in, and the intent of it is to connect some principles that we looked at a year ago. So if you've been with me for a while, we're going to go back and we're going to revisit some of those things. It's not going to be as deep, but I'm going to try to give you a bit of a framework for that. So just to try to be somewhat consistent with how we do it, let's start off with our core values. We always talk about how Jesus valued people. There we go. Jesus valued people. And at Cockerton Community Church, we have 8 core values, and those core values are Bible. What else we have? Prayer. Service. Worship. We'll get to that one. Well, that's the one I'm violating right now. I'm in big time violation. Stewardship. Community. I like it. What else am I missing? Relevancy. And starts with an O. Outreach. And then in this particular group, we have a couple of core values, and those core values are timeliness and growth. All right, those are our core values here. So today I'm doing a lesson, and this is actually a lesson I'm modified. I've been teaching pharmacists this lesson for the last several weeks, and I've adapted it just so you know. Whenever I teach pharmacists, I'm actually teaching them Bible principles. They just don't know it. That's sort of my trick. But when I teach anybody, I try to teach them Bible principles, and maybe they just don't know it. But I'm going to go through a framework that I share with them on what I call directional leadership. And so that's going to be our topic today. And then next week, and I got to do this because I got a smaller board. The next 3 weeks, this is what we're going to look at. We're going to look at next week is going to be how do we lead ourselves? So how do you lead yourself? The week after is going to be how do you lead others? And then finally, how do you lead your particular team? Wherever your team is, how do you lead them, right? That's what we're going to be looking at. So this is going to just run parallel to the 4-week next steps, and then we're going to get back into growth principles, and the week after that, we're going to jump back in to look at the law of environment. So just so you know what the next month is going to look like, that's what the next month looks like. It took me to about Thursday to figure that out, but that's where we are. Let me see. This lesson today is very much going to be a setup to prepare us to look for these. And if you've been with me for some amount of time, you know that my intent is to have each lesson have value and stand on itself. So if you're only here today, you get value. But if you're here, and you will get value if you're here today. But if you're here the next several weeks in a row, you're going to see how these things sort of stack together. So that's a little different than how I have been trying to teach the last few months. But I just give you that as the preview. Now, much of the lesson that I have today is things you've heard me talk about before. I'm just going to try to package it in a little different way. And I'm going to start out just by telling you this particular story. And if you're a note taker, you may want to take this note to start with. And it's that people are looking to be led. People are looking to be led. And the exact circumstances where this really became obvious to me was when my niece got married last fall. My niece gets married last fall, and we're doing all these exciting things. And it turns out that the wedding was done, and people were told to go to the reception. The reception was being held at my parents' house. And what I heard at the end of the wedding ceremony is, just go get Jess, he has a key for the garage. And it was a good thing that I heard that, so I ran home, I got the key to the garage, I went next door, I opened the garage door up, and we had to take out the tables, and then there was the place settings. What do you think? What do you put in the middle of the table? Place setting? Centerpiece, there we are. I knew there was a special term for it, I didn't know what it was. But you know, we had these tents set up, and so I get there, I'm opening the garage door up, and now like all the guests are arriving, and nobody knows where to put anything. And people are looking at me like, what do I do with this? And you know, your guess was better than mine. It really was. I had no clue what was going on. And I would tell you this, the guests that were shown up, none of them were upset. Like they were more than happy to help out. They were more than happy to help out. But what was missing in that equation was some leadership around, this is what needs to be here and this is what needs to be there. No one knew what to do. And as I've really just sort of stewed on that since that day last fall, I've come to realize that it's not just that people are looking to be led, but people are looking to be led well. People are looking to be led well. And, you know, I would say that over the last couple of years as we've gone through the pandemic, right, there's been all sorts of different guidance that's come out. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, do this, do that. If somebody gets sick, don't go to school. Did you guys have to deal with that? Get sick, don't go to school?
We're all homeschooled.
You're all homeschooled. That is. So you just didn't have to go to, oh, never mind. But you know, there's all these rules. If you have a fever, you can't go back to school for 72, like there's all this, and that stuff would change. And there'd be conversations that were happening, like, what are we supposed to do? Are we following the stuff? And you know, in my household, with Trace in the daycare, like those rules were changing all the time, and she would come home just frustrated and exhausted. And like, you know, how do we figure this out? And all the different daycare directors are talking to one another about, what are you guys doing? How are you handling this? It was just all this different complexity that people were dealing with. And what was at the heart of it is that people were looking to be led well. That's what they were looking for. And I'll tell you, it was about a decade ago that my eyes were opened to just understand that there is this huge gap between where people are looking to be led, or how people are looking to be led, and how they're actually led. There is just such a huge, huge gap. I don't have all the verses on the board here today, but if you want to be following along with me, we're going to go to Psalm 23. Psalm 23, verses 1 through 3. This is one that you're probably familiar with. It reads this: The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Shepherd's a good leader, isn't he? Shepherd's a good leader. You know, and people seek guidance and leadership for their well-being. Like they're looking to have this so that they can be led well. Now, before I go further, I'll just reiterate, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before if you've been with me for any length of time, but what is a leader, or who is a leader? And the definition that I give for a leader is anyone who helps someone at some time get somewhere or do something. So a leader is anyone who helps someone at some time get somewhere or do something. And if you think about it, that's a very generous definition. That's a very generous definition. And under that definition, we can find that each one of us is a leader. And you've probably heard me go in and say, well, under this definition, is a newborn a leader? And the answer is yes, because a newborn leads a couple of, especially for first-time parents, a newborn will lead these brand new parents to become a competent parent. Like, you know, I don't know how many of you have gone through that, but, you know, there's this, like, you have a kid, you're at the hospital, everything's fine, and they say, go home, and you're like, really? Like, we're about as rough to deal with as we can, right? So everybody in this room, everybody that watches the replay of this, everybody we are all leaders. And so here's the next piece to it. It's how do we lead people? And we lead people through a single word, that's influence. How do we influence people? That's the definition of leadership. So I'm skipping ahead here a little bit. I would tell you that in the 10 years since I was first sort of wakened up to this idea, I have traveled all over the place. I have done hours and hours of studying. I've spent lots of money to try to figure out how can I become a better leader. And on one particular trip, I went to Florida, and one of my mentors said to me, he said, Jess, everyone deserves to be led well. And I want you to think about that. And everyone deserves to be led well. And I'll tell you, whenever he told me that, I didn't want to believe it. I did not want to believe that everybody deserved to be led well, but I had to ask myself this question: who deserves to not be led well? Who deserves to not be led well? And we're not too far from the holiday season. You have your family get-togethers. We probably all have a weird uncle or weird cousin or something like that. Or in my family get-togethers, you are the weird uncle or weird cousin. And you have to say, does even this weird person at the dinner table, do they deserve to be led well? And I think the answer is, yeah, they do. Even people you don't like, they deserve to be led well. And so I would tell you, Jesus teaches us to lead others well. And if you want to take this verse down, it's Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. Well, this one's going to be very, very familiar to you. Words of Jesus, he said, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. The golden rule, right? This is what's commonly referred to as the golden rule. It underlines the idea that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness, respect, and to be led well. Right? That's what we have. Yet, knowing that people want to be led well, knowing that people deserve to be led well, we still have this gap that exists out there. And I would ask you, why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose there's this big gap that exists out there? And some would even say that it's a massive gap between where people should be led and where they are. And I would tell you that from my experience, it's because people do not understand that leadership skills can be learned. That's been my biggest takeaway from all of this, is that we didn't realize that there were skills and there were tactics that we could use that would help us improve our leadership. You see, I think I just presumed that when God made each of us, he just gave us a certain amount of leadership, and that's what we had to work with, and that you couldn't really do anything with it. But whenever I began to understand that leadership is very much like learning to play the piano, you can start and you can get better at it, right? You just need to learn what those principles are, and you need to learn to get better at it. And I'll tell you, that was such a life-changing moment for me. I don't remember the day that it happened, but I could tell you the time of day that it happened. It was after dinner. It was starting to get dark. It was in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. I was out walking laps around a hospital that was next to the hotel I was staying at. I could take you to the square of sidewalk I was standing on whenever I heard somebody say to me, Jess, leadership skills can be learned. And I thought, oh wow, this may change a lot of things. It may change some things for me, and it may change things for those people around me. And as I started to study and learn more, I will tell you that poor leadership began to stand out all the more to me. As you begin to learn these things, poor leadership sticks out very much like a sore thumb. Now, I would tell you this, when you encounter people with poor leadership skills, this is not to say that they are bad people, that they're evil, anything like that, that they have any type of ill intent towards you. What I mean by that is that they probably have very much a limited understanding of how to lead people well. In 2010, when I was with Rite Aid, we were scaling our immunization program. We had a couple hundred immunizing pharmacists, and we were given the challenge to go from about 800 to 12,000. And we said to go from 800 immunizing pharmacists to 12,000 immunizing pharmacists, we need some help. So we went out and we were hiring people to join our clinical team. And we go through this long interview process, and we end up identifying 12 people we want to bring on the team to help us do this work. And we had finally figured it out, and we had gone through HR, and HR was going to be sending out the offer letters to these candidates. And I was nearby one of the candidates' stores, and I stopped in his store, and I wanted to give him some encouragement. And it was after dinner, and I stopped in and I said, hey, don't be surprised if you hear from HR in the next couple of days. HR is going to be calling you with some good news. And as we're having this conversation, one of his staff comes up and says, hey, I got a question, and they have this back and forth. And when his staff walks away, what he did is he just had to take a deep breath, rolled his eyes, looked up, and he said, I can't get anyone to do what I want them to do. Have you ever been in that place? Have you ever been in that place where you can't get anybody to do what you want them to do? Now, my response at this time actually shows my limited understanding of what leadership was. Because I said, I'm in here to encourage him. So I said, oh, don't worry about it. You're not going to have to be here much longer. Little did I know that this was a guy who was basically expressing to me that he doesn't have good leadership skills, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to promote him out of a store to a place where he has 400 stores to help, and he's going to struggle mightily. Like that, foot in trap. That's what I did. I fell for it. And I share that story with you because it gives us some insight to what I call the forbidden phrase of leadership. And it's a variation of this thought. You'll hear it worded in different ways, but it's very much, my people won't do this, right? In this particular case, he was saying, I can't get my people to do this, right? You'll hear some people say, or my people won't do that. And fill in, whatever that is, it's a fill in the blank. Our people here only eat donuts. Our people wouldn't eat apples if we put them back there. Well, we could get people to eat apples or oranges or whatever, right? There's different ways that we can look at this. But I would ask you, have you ever used a phrase like that? Have you ever heard somebody do that? Have you ever heard somebody say, oh, our folks won't do that, right? I'm going to tell you, those words, what I want to encourage you, when you hear those words, I want you to hear those words as somebody who has the possibility of improving their leadership. Not that they're a bad leader. No, they may be struggling, they may find themselves in that place, but they just don't realize that they can become a better leader yet. That's what I've learned. And this isn't a new phenomenon. This is we actually have a story of this in Scripture. If you want to go with me to, it's in Exodus chapter 32. There's a fine illustration. It's Exodus 32 verses 21 through 24. Moses has gone up on the mountain. He's been up on the mountain for quite some time. While he's on the mountain, the people at the bottom said, I think Moses has forgotten about us. And so the people go to Aaron and say, you know what? I think Moses has forgotten about us. We should build a calf. Right? That's the story. You've probably heard this. The story goes like this. Moses, he said to Aaron, what did these people do to you that you have let let me try reading this again in English, all right? What did these people do to you that you led them into such great sin? Do not be angry, my lord, Aaron answered. You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. So I told them, whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off. Then they gave me the gold and threw it in the fire, and out came a calf. I have no idea how this happened. Right? Like, this is what we see. Like, Moses comes down. He's like, Aaron, I left you in charge. And he comes back and like, well, this is what the people wanted to do. They wouldn't do the right thing. This is what they wanted to do. right? And we've all experienced this. We've been part of this at every different layer of the story. We've caught our kids like you know better than to do this, right? We've been the kid that's been caught, right? You know, we've been on both sides of this. But I want to encourage you today just to turn your mental radar up to be on the lookout for when you hear this forbidden phrase, right? Because when you hear this forbidden phrase, it's not just somebody who is a poor leader, but this is somebody who can improve their leadership skills. And I would also just encourage you that if you find yourself using it, I want to give you a phrase to make this a little bit better. The phrase that you want to use is not that my people won't do this, it's that I haven't led my people to do this yet. I haven't figured it out yet, right? That's where we are. So there's far too many people in all walks and stages of life who are unnecessarily being challenged today because of a lack of leadership skills. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Sadly, the little bit of leadership skill that we have is often misdirected, and that's why I want to give you this framework that I call directional leadership. You see, I'm going to draw a box here. And this is where Scott's going to be in a bad spot because he's probably not going to be able to see this very well. You are in this box, all right? And there's people in your life that you have to work with. There's some people who you have authority over. So whenever I draw directional leadership, I'm going to put these places based on where authority flows, right? So there's some people in your life that you may have authority over. You're in charge of these particular people. In that particular way, we are going to say we are leading down, okay? Now there's some people who have authority over us. Sometimes we have a boss, right? And in that particular case, we may have to learn how to lead up. And if you have a boss that's somewhat clueless, right? Some of us are the boss that's clueless, right? You know, that's right. But then there's also another direction we lead, which is the direction of a cross, right? And this is where you don't have authority one way or the other. These are your peers, right? These are your peers. Parents, you've watched your kids, and your kid says everybody else is doing it, right? That's leading across. That's happening there. That's what your kids are experiencing. So let me see if I've screwed up my notes here all that bad. I would tell you that in working with people and developing their leadership skills, the question that I most often get is around leading up. How do I help my boss? My boss is really struggling. How do I do this? Now, in a world where people are looking to be led well, and we're in a world where there's this huge gap in leadership skills amongst people in leadership roles, it can become common to think that your leader is overlooking or taking things for granted, right? That can be a common thing for us to happen. And we can see ways that things could be improved, right? There's ways that we can see things to be improved. We need to be able to influence people. So we have authority set up this way, but we need to have some influence that goes this way, and this way. All right, so now we're going to get into the directions. But there's more than just three ways that we have to lead people. There's not three directions of leadership. There's actually a fourth, and the fourth is how do you lead you? Because I'm going to tell you, I won't speak for you, but I think you'll find quick agreement that the most difficult person that you've ever had to lead is yourself. Have you ever said, today, this is the day I'm going to do whatever, and whatever that was didn't get done? Okay, so that hasn't happened. So I'm just on my own in this one, right? Have you ever had the day where there's 10 things on your to-do list, and at the end of the day, there's 12 things on your to-do list, and the first 10 haven't been touched, right? Like I've been there. I've been there. That was, that's my life, right? So we need to recognize that the most difficult person to lead is yourself. I'm going to tell you, when we study the life of Jesus, we can find that Jesus gives us some insight on how we lead in all of these different directions. Now, what I typically do is I say if you have 100% of your leadership effort, how do you divide your effort up? What percentage goes into leading down? What percentage of your effort goes into leading across? What percent goes into leading up? And what percent goes into leading you? And I'm not going to make you go through this exercise, but I'm going to break it down this way. Where we start is 50% of our leadership effort should be given to leading you. That's where we start. It has to start with leading yourself. And if you think about it, this makes a great deal of sense. You see, you have the greatest amount of control over yourself. How much control do you have over your boss? None. How much control do you have over your peers? Very, very little. How much, some of us don't even have control over the people we're supposed to have control over, right? Who do I have most control over? Me. That's where we start, right? It's the easiest place to start, and when you start, you can start in any area that you want, right? You have the greatest level of flexibility on where you're going to start working on improving those leadership skills. And as I began learning about leadership skills, one of the first things that I decided that I was going to study, where I wanted to get better at as a leader, was with my productivity. And that's because, to my example, I had 10 things on my list. At the end of the day, I had 12. This dance isn't going to last very long, right? It's not going to go well. So I started learning about productivity. And as I started learning about productivity and I became more productive, what was I able to do? I was able to help other people around me because I was becoming more productive. And Jesus modeled this for us. He modeled leading himself, right? We know that Jesus would often take time and he would step away. He would step away, he'd be in prayer, he'd be setting the tone for his day by leading himself. If you want to follow along here, Proverbs chapter 3. Proverbs 3 verses 5 and 6 read, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." When you start off and you spend some time with God about how you're going to lead people, I'm going to tell you, there's good things that come from that. So 50% of our effort goes in leading you. The next direction that we need is, or the next most important direction that we lead is going to be in leading, anybody want to guess? Across, down, up. Up is the correct answer. Right? Up. Now trust me, it'll make sense, right? And again, now when we talk about this, we're talking about leadership, we're talking about influence, right? This is different than authority. There's different authority. So, and I'm going to tell you, I get all sorts of questions about how do I lead up? My boss is clueless, right? Where do we go with this, right? So, there's so many people out there that struggle with their boss. But let me ask you this: have you ever wondered, maybe my boss is struggling just on their own? Right? Sometimes your boss won't tell you that. Sometimes they're just, that's just what's going on. Perhaps your boss is in over his head or over her head. So when you lead up, what are you doing? You are throwing a life preserver to people, man. You are. When we become active in looking ways for make our bosses' lives easier, that's leading up. And here's the beautiful thing about leading up, and this is why it's so important. That's why it's the next most important thing. It's that when you do this, when you make life better for your boss, it makes life better for everybody downstream. It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that when you put your effort here, everything downhill gets better, right? So, you make life better not just for your boss, but for everybody else. When you take work off your boss's plate and deliver solutions that benefit many, everybody yields the benefit from that. And as you do this, you build more influence with your boss. And you become more and more effective at leading up. And what you'll learn to do is you learn to honor your boss in public so that you can influence your boss in private. And I think there's a wonderful story about this. I think there's actually a couple of stories about this. But what it does whenever you do this, you earn the right for your boss to listen to you. There's a lot of people that I've experienced in life that they'll just talk. But they haven't built the influence, so like it falls on deaf ears. But I want you to think about, there's the story of Jesus and the centurion. Who had authority in that relationship? The centurion was the police, right? He had 100 soldiers under him. And so Jesus was able to lead up to that centurion. If you go to John chapter 3, we know that Jesus sometimes, Jesus would have these conflicts with the Pharisees. Who had the authority in those relationships? The Pharisees were, they were highly influential in that culture, right? But if you look at the story in John chapter 3, what do we find? What's that story about? It's a story of Nicodemus. What's Nicodemus's role? He's a member of the Pharisees. And what does he do? He comes to Jesus by himself at night. He comes to Jesus in private. That's just the way that the influence goes. I think that's just a neat. I think that's such a neat thing that Jesus had built such influence around people that here's one of the big bosses that's coming to him at night to say, hey, help me understand this stuff. Right? I think it's a neat illustration. So now with 100% of our effort, we've spent 75. We've got 25% left. How are we going to spend it? What's the next most important way for us to spend our leadership effort? Across. And how much are we going to give it, Jenny? 15. You've heard this before. 15% across, right? That's the next one. This is when you're leading your peers. Jesus was always leading across. He was always leading his peers, right? He was out there healing people. He was out there healing brothers and sisters anywhere he could, right? He was always leading across. I'm going to tell you right now, when you become intentional about leading across, you will find that your peers become your cheerleaders. Your peers will become so excited for you that when new opportunities come, they'll be expecting you to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. Your peers will speak highly of you as you build your influence with them. And this is exactly what happened to Jesus, right? This is how Jesus gets a crowd of 5,000, right? That's what's happening here. So now we're up to 90%, which means that we have 10% left in leading down. 10% left in leading down. Now, when I first did this exercise, I thought there is no way that these numbers can possibly be right. Surely there has to be some mistake. Surely there has to be some catch. And surely there is a catch. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you a number of phrases. And I would give you part of the phrase and you would fill it in. But I'm going to give you this phrase this morning. See if you know how this phrase ends. Monkey see, monkey do. You've heard that. You've heard that before. Monkey see, monkey do. We use this expression because what it says is that we do what is modeled for us, right? We do what's modeled for us. So as a parent, you may notice that your kids will say phrases that you say, will have mannerisms that you have, or you may see them mimic. Like that's a big part of what happens. So much of what we do in life is with something that we've seen modeled from somebody else, and that includes how we lead people. So if we've seen people model poor leadership for us before, what are we most likely to do? We're most likely to model poor leadership to others. That's what we're most likely to do. But if you understand this model that I've shared with you this morning and what we've been describing, if the people you lead see you working on yourself, leading yourself, did Jesus' disciples see him do that? Right? If the people you lead see you leading up, did Jesus' disciples see him lead up? Yeah, he did. If the people you lead see you leading across, did Jesus' disciples see him lead across? Yeah, he did. They did. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think these guys are going to do? we're going to do the exact same thing. And truth be told, because that's what they witnessed, the world's been forever changed. Jesus goes away, these guys take off, the world's set on fire, still to this day, right? So that's one of those things that we look at. If you want to follow along, Jesus at the Last Supper, just before he is crucified, John chapter 14, verse 12. Jesus is having a little heart-to-heart with his disciples, and he says to them, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing." If you believe in him, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. And watch what comes from that. Will do the works I have been doing, and they will, that's a promise, they will do even greater things than these. And this is a verse I kind of like to challenge. I do like to challenge people with it, right? As a follower of Jesus, are there things that we can do that could be greater than what Jesus did? And I think, especially as a church, we've done some of those things. I would say that it didn't take too long. How many people do you think Jesus preached to in his life? Make a number, 10,000. Well, there's a number, 10,000. How many people do you think Paul preached to? More than 10,000 is the answer, right? He did. I mean, he went all over the world, right? How many people did Billy Graham preach to? Yeah. So there's people. Jesus feeds the 5,000. Are there people that have fed more than 5,000 people? Yeah. Those promises are available to us. Will we do the things that Jesus did? Will we lead like Jesus leads? Right? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. But I'm sorry. Let me read the whole verse. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And so, I just want to ask you, what would life look like for you if your team started leading themselves? What happens? What would your life look like if the people on your team, started leading up to you? That they started looking at those things that are on your plate and said, "Hey, we can take that off your plate. We can make this a little bit better." What would that look like? What would life look like if the people on your team started leading across? Tonight's the Super Bowl, right? I'm going to guarantee you there's going to be some leading across happening at the Super Bowl tonight. There's going to be people on those teams that are getting after each other because they're going to be holding them to a high standard, right? That's what we're going to witness here tonight. Now, but I would also tell you this: there's a lot of people who serve on teams where they don't get along with their boss, where they don't like their coworkers, that lead their teams poorly. There's a lot of challenges with that. But when we look at this, when we have 10% of the leading down, what that is that becomes a very focused, very intentional, very situational type thing on how you really help tailor that person to show them how that they can win and help others. So at this point, I trust this framework is making some sense to you, even if you haven't really thought of this before. This little diamond here has been very, very helpful for me. But I would ask you, as you think about this, where do lost people fit on this grid? I know it's not here. I know it's not here. You're saying across. I would actually encourage us to think about leading up. I want to encourage you to think, because again, what happens when we lead up, everything downhill gets better. And if we look at if we put that type of effort into not just sharing the wins that we have across, hey coworker, this is the win I'm having, this is what's going on. But when we look and we see that the problems that people are having, and we can say, let me try to help you with that. Let me take that off your plate. Let me show you what that love looks like, right? I think there's a number of things that can really benefit when we are looking at that. Keep in mind how we engage with lost people is observed by the people around us. How we engage with them. So if you're going to complain about the people you're supposed to lead up to, right? If you're going to complain about lost people, what do you expect other people to do? That's like, that's a tough pill for me. That's a lesson I had to learn. I hope you haven't had to. I hope you didn't have to learn that lesson, or if you have to learn that lesson, I hope you learn it quick. But we can't be saying, oh, all these lost people are so terrible. No, we gotta love those lost people. That's the challenge. Because there's people that observe it. Remember, monkey see, monkey do. If they're going to see people complaining about this, and this, people that we're leading, they're going to do the exact same thing. So when it comes to lost people, I would suggest that we need to approach them the same way that you would approach anyone else who has authority over you. You want to look for areas where they are challenged and identify ways that you can help make life easier for them, right? That's where we are. So this is my framework on what I call directional leadership. And where I go from here is I say, well, this is what we look at specifically. We look at leading yourself. This is next week, right? That's what we're going to look at next week. The week after, we're going to talk about leading others. That's all of this. And then the week after that is going to be leading your team, which is going to be specifically here. So that's what the next 3 weeks are going to look like. If you like the lesson, you can come back for more. If you don't like it, I guess tough, right? Tough. There's other places out there where you can. There's other classes that we have. So please find a place where you're growing. Remember, that's one of our core values here. Be in a place where you are growing. This is the way we're going to grow over the next 3 weeks. And again, next week we're going to look at how do you lead yourself. And I guess I'll show you this. When you work on leading yourself, this is just to get you a little bit excited. When you work on leading yourself, what happens is this little box that's you gets bigger. If I can get the lid off of this. Imagine you in a bigger box, right? Now you are able to influence more this way. Now you're able to influence more this way. Now you're able to influence more this way. It gets to be an exciting thing, and that's where we're going to start with how do you lead yourself next week. So that's what I had prepared for you today. I'm going to stop the recording. I guess I would say maybe I'll stop it.